Welcome to Backstage with Richard Ridge. We're back at the legendary Sardi's, and my guest is one of Broadway's most celebrated and beloved director choreographers, who on February 19th will stage the one-night-only 25th anniversary concert of her Tony Award-winning musical Crazy for You from Manhattan Concert Productions. Please welcome five-time Tony Award winner Susan Stroman. Well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You look gorgeous. Here we are at Sardi's.
I know.
We got your portrait behind you.
I know. Wonderful.
Okay, so how excited are you to be working on Crazy for You again for Manhattan Concert Productions?
Well, it's thrilling, because it's 25 years.
Yeah.
And in fact, the date that they chose to do it on February 19th is exactly 25 years from when we opened on Broadway. So it was a sign.
Yeah.
So yes, I have to do this. So it's thrilling. The show is so joyful and happy and so funny. I think it's actually coming at a very right time.
What's it been like revisiting it for you?
Well, it's been thrilling revisiting it because it takes me right back, I have to say, of any time I talk about a show, a show that I've done a while ago, I actually go back to the moments it was created, and so creating Crazy for You was a very special time, and it has great stories because even, I don't know if you know this, but we did a run through here in New York, and we were heading to Washington, D.C. to open at the National Theater, and the team had gone, and the design team had gone, and stage management had all gone, and we ran it here in New York and realized the second act didn't work. And Mike Ockram was very brave to say, okay, we're going to change the second act. So we all got on the Amtrak train, and from the time we were on the Amtrak to New York to Washington, D.C., we rewrote the second act and then took it a second act to the design team and the stage management, and they were like, what is this? But it saved the show. It saved the show. We had a number in there called By Strauss, gone, and we replaced it with Stiff Upper Lip. And there was a whole number there of costumes that got thrown out, and so it was a big change. But it was the thing that saved the show. But it was that very brave train ride, and something like that happening early in my career, knowing that this is what you have to do, and it was great. And of course the show was a success.
I never knew that story.
Yeah. Yes, Amtrak.
Yeah. No, but it's like you see those in those Hollywood MGM movies.
Yes,
like,
that was
we'll change the show on the train.
And that happened. That absolutely happened.
And you got this huge chorus in this show, right?
Yes, I know.
Student chorus, right?
I know. Oh, yes, absolutely. There's 200. So there's an orchestra on stage, and behind them are 200 students singing, and they'll sing all the ensemble moments. It'll be thrilling, and I'll give them a few little moments to do.
Stroman bits, right? Stro bits.
They'll have a couple of those, I'm sure.
And dancing. This is the first big dancing show they've done there.
Yes, I know. I have a great. I know. Yes. It was a shock to I think everyone when they realized how much dancing there was in Crazy for You. But it's hard to do Crazy for You without some dance, So it is a concert, and there are no sets. There are a few props, but we're going to try to touch on all the choreography, which is wonderful. And I have an incredible ensemble and an incredible group of principals that everybody can dance, everybody can sing, and everybody can dance.
I was going to say, what a cast.
I know.
Tony Yazbeck, Laura Osnes.
I know.
The original Harry Groner.
I
mean,
know.
look at your cast, Marklyn Baker.
I know, and Harry Groner's coming back to do Zangler now. And that's when I emailed him to see if that might strike his fancy. He was so up for it, because Zangler's a real vaudeville comedian, originally played by Bruce Adler, and so Harry, has that in him. So he's perfect for Zangler, and it's actually kind of lovely to bring him back to do that.
Yeah. What are you enjoying the most so far with revisiting?
Well, actually, is trying. It's it's interesting. Of all the shows I've done, I remember the choreography to Crazy for You, all of it. I could do it for you right now. I can't quite remember what I just did, but I can remember all the choreography to Crazy for You. So it's actually fun to get up and do it, and have it just come back to you naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
The original production is still one of the finest nights, many nights, I have spent in the theater ever.
Oh.
I know it meant so much to you professionally and personally. Favorite moments of the original? Favorite memories?
Well, I think Shall We Dance, I think, is a beautiful number. It's a beautiful song, but also creating that because it was that idea of Ken Ludwig didn't have to write "They Fall in Love" and then they fall in love, or even say "I love you." I was able to show that through dance, and I think Crazy Few is a good example of how dance propels the plot forward, not only in storytelling but also in transitions. With the set, the collaboration with Robin Wagner was very strong, and William Ivy Long very strong, and that idea of creating a seamless evening where the designers and the creative team are all on the same page to make it go forward. At that time it was the beginning, I think, too, also of realizing that an audience has more of a cinematic eye, and they won't stand for like blackouts, and you can't write a show anymore where there's a song in there named Bill and there's no Bill in the show. So everything has to move forward, and Crazy Few, I think, is a good example of the transitions of the set choreographically move forward, and also they dance through the story and the plot, and tell the story through dance. And I know at that time we hadn't had many dance shows, and I think people were happy to see so much dance on Broadway. It really started a whole resurgence in dance.
So growing up, where did your love for performing begin?
Well, it was my love for directing and choreography. It wasn't so much performing. When I was little, my father was a wonderful piano player, and so I was that little kid who danced around the living room to him playing the piano and creating stories and creating dance to his music. So I was the choreographer, for all the community theaters, and even the halftime show, in high school, and so it was all about creating to music, and but when I came to New York, I knew I came as a song and dance gal, because I could sing and dance, but it was always to be on the other side of the table. I just knew I couldn't take over when I came to New York. I had to assess the situation.
When you were young, listening to your dad play, you could actually picture people in your head dancing to the music you heard, right?
Oh yes, I still do to this day. I visualize music, whether it's an old standard or rock and roll or classical piece of music. I imagine people dancing through my head, and sets and costumes, the whole thing. So it's music isn't such a relaxing entity, but it really. I have visions of movements.
Love that.
Yeah, and that happened when I was little, and it's still to this day. To this day, I hear music and I imagine things.
I love that. Before we get into your career, your last year of college, you took a cross-country trip in a Cadillac.
Yes.
Would you tell that story?
How do you know this story?
Well, it's
How do you know this story?
It's you.
Yes, I did. Because when you're young, you feel invincible. There's nothing you can't do. So I drove across country with a girlfriend. At that time there was a service that if someone needed their car driven across, they'd pay you like $300 to drive their car across because they were moving or something. So we signed up at this agency and we got a big black Cadillac that we were going to drive across. And you're supposed to drive straight across, but we kind of went ding, 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 up and down the United States. But we were getting it to San Francisco, so then we got it to San Francisco. And I realized we had no money and I had no way to get back, and there's not something you didn't think about when I was heading out. And I'm not sure how we were going to get home. I didn't know what we were going to do. And then I went down to Fisherman's Wharf and I saw people, I saw a guitar player busking and making money, and I saw someone was dressed as a human jukebox in an old refrigerator cardboard box making money, and I thought, well, what if we did this, because of course we packed our tap shoes for some weird reason. We had our tap shoes, we had our bathing suits and our tap shoes. So I think that we were going to take class or something. So I went up to a one-man band who had, a harmonica and cymbals and a drum and a guitar. And I said, hey, how'd you like to have two blondes in front of you tap dancing? And he said, sure. And I went back and made like 5 tap routines. I could go with anything he played, any time signature he played. And he would just start playing, and I would whisper to my partner Debbie Boma, who was a wonderful friend and still is, and we would do the tap routine, and and I would toss out terminology, like, take it home, that kind of stuff, But we ended up making we would make like $80 an hour. And we ended up staying there all summer and living the life and just busking on the streets of San Francisco. And it was great. And we ended up on the Johnny Carson show.
A talent agent saw you?
Yes, it took us to the Johnny Carson show. And at that time, he had a thing where he would say, was there any talent in the audience? And we raised our hand, and they happened to have like Masonite on the stairs, And we came out, and Doc Severinsen played Little Brown Jug, and we tap danced. And I think we got a free steak dinner. Yeah.
I love that story.
It was good college story.
That's great.
I can't believe you know that story.
Oh, listen, it's you. So when you first came to New York, I know you did some national tours. You did the big national tour of Chicago for Bob Fosse.
Yes, I did.
What did you take away from him, and what did you learn from him in that?
Well, the idea of working with him was thrilling, and that, what, the most thing taking away from him was that every step was motivated with an image. Even like if you see in Chicago when they do this, he would say that's like wiping the blood off your hands, and every step had a wild image that he would help you in order to execute the dance step. He would give you another image to help you, and that's something I took in, and of course I was scared and nervous at the same time working with him, but it was that tour was with Gwen and with Cheetah and Jerry Orbach, and I ended up being able to take acting classes from Jerry Orbach, and it was an amazing experience, an amazing year. I was the Hunyek, not guilty.
I love it. To watch the master work, though, to watch someone like him work.
I know, it was amazing.
So you were on the album of Sugar Babies.
I was on the album.
Okay, I have that, okay.
Yes, because when I first came here, for some reason I got to sing on a lot of the albums just as backup and everything. I know, it was great.
So did you meet Rudy Toronto there?
How did I meet Rudy Toronto? We did musical chairs together, but I think that was the first time I met him.
Because you assisted him on that, right?
Yes, I did. I assisted him on that, yes.
And you loved doing that, because that was sort of taking you behind the scenes, right?
It was, and he was a great man, a lovely man. He was so wonderful to me and very funny. Yeah. He was so funny, fabulous.
And you met Scott Ellis.
And then I met Scott Ellis.
Yeah.
I know. And actually, it was because I think when we finally took musical chairs to Broadway, it lasted, 2 weeks or something.
At the Rialto?
At the Rialto, yes, good. But Scott and I were sitting on a stoop out front and lamenting about how we wanted to be on the other side of the table. And Scott had done the Rink with Kander Nebb, and I had done Chicago. And we thought, well, what if we went and asked if we could do one of their shows and take it off Broadway, do it in a new way. And, the worst that could happen is they say no. But in fact, they said yes, so we asked them about Flora the Red Menace. And we took it to the Vineyard Theater, and David Thompson wrote the book for it. And so we not only had a wonderful time with Kander Nebb, we all became very good friends with Kander Nebb, and they became a part of our lives. And Kander still is a big part of my life,
Showboat with director Harold Prince.
Yes.
And you won your second Tony Award for that, for Best Choreography, working with Hal.
Well, Hal actually saw my work in Flora the Red Menace. That's how he hired me. And that's the thing is, I think, the Flora the Red Menace was just a small, we did it in the form of the WPA Theater. It was a small piece, but everybody saw it, and because it was Kander Nebb's music. So because of that, I ended up working for Hal Prince. Because of that, I ended up doing Liza's show at Radio City Music Hall, Liza stepping out at Radio City. And because of the relationship with Kander Nebb, I ended up doing The World Goes Round with Scott Ellis and David Thompson, and it was all because of that off-Broadway show, Flora the Red Menace, and it is a good lesson that you should just ask the question. Like, the worst thing that can happen is somebody says no, but you should absolutely ask the question. And when we asked Kander and Nebb, they said yes. And
back to Kander and Nebb, Steel Pier, one of my all-time favorite musicals.
Yes.
I still call it the 46th Street Theater.
Yeah.
I know it's the Richard Rodgers now.
I know.
But another sort of started from scratch with
it's definitely started from scratch and around Fred Ebb's kitchen table, and the idea of a marathon, and would have a great deal of dance in it. It had a lot of dance in it, and we loved working on it. And actually, Kander and Nebb wrote a very romantic score for that, and I think that was a shock for everyone, them writing a romantic score, because they're usually very edgy. And it was a great time for us. Another show that kind of just got away, but also, Deb Monk had a big number in that, and she's become a big part of our lives. She's with us all the time, and Kristen Chenoweth, her first show. I know.
Because I remember sitting there, I think you were on that studio on 56th Street.
Yeah.
It was between like 10th and 11th or 11th and 12th.
Oh, God.
No, is that black studio? I remember seeing Kristen Chenoweth. Everybody's like, we're going to talk to Gregory Harrison. I'm like, who is that?
I know.
Because she had told me originally the concept for that role was like a tall, leggy, beautiful blonde.
I know, we got this.
And then you saw her come in, and
she was incredible audition.
Yeah.
And then she was incredible in the part.
Research begins it all for you, because you're so wonderful with your research. You always have been with dance styles from a certain period.
Yes.
Is that what gets it going for you?
Sure. Like Crazy Fugue, for example, it takes place in the early 30s, and so it's in two places. It's New York City and Dead Rock, Nevada. And they're going to dance in a different way in New York than they do in Dead Rock.
Yeah.
But even doing the research at that time, you'll see in the choreography the girls hit certain poses that reflect the architecture of New York at the time. So you'll see they'll hit something like that, where it'd be like those lamps with the girls with the balls on top of their hands, and moments where you see in like Art Deco design from the buildings, and and the dance in New York is more sophisticated than in Dead Rock, Nevada. So it has two different colors to it. But it's doing that research of what was going on at the time in New York in the 30s. And then also I took a trip to a mining town in Nevada that was out of business, and took pictures and thought, what could we have on stage? And then that, had a great collaboration with Robin Wagner about the hardware store, what I could pull out of a hardware store, because the show is about, it revolves around a mining town that's dead, and the miners have nothing to do, and then of course these New Yorkers come to town. But the real point of Crazy Few is about how a theater renews a city, and what has happened in that town is that the theater has died and the town has gone, and if you could get the theater to come alive again, the town will be reborn. And that's true of any city in America. You go across America and you see these towns, and if the theater is closed, the town is dead.
Yeah.
So it is about bringing what happens if you try to infuse art or theater or music into a town that is dead, and it will be reborn.
Beautiful. Favorite memories of The Music Man?
Oh, The Music Man. Yeah, I have a lot of favorite. That's such a perfect show. It is a perfect show, and Craig Bierko was a great Music Man. He was so good, and Rebecca Luker. Working with Craig and Rebecca are the highlights, I think, for that. But also being able to do the choreography of that had elements of band instruments in it, and dancing as if you had an instrument in your hand. But I think the favorite memory of The Music Man was I thought, because I do this with novels too. I close the book and I think, well, what's happened to these people afterwards? What are they doing afterwards? I wonder about these people, even when the story's over. So after I shut the script, The Music Man, I thought, what are they all doing? What's happening? And I thought, well, they would have probably all started to learn music. They probably would have all gone on the bandwagon there. And so I asked the producers, Michael David, I said, could I give trombone lessons to the whole company? And I said, it'll either work or it won't, you know. And he said, sure. So we hired a trombone teacher. And at 4 o'clock every day, the entire company would learn the trombone. And, you know, I would walk past it and it would sound awful. It would sound just like a moose, you know. It would just sound just awful, awful. And then all of a sudden, like at the end of the second week, I was like those mothers in the Music Man. They were making music, and that's my boy. Yeah. All of a sudden, they were making music. I was experiencing the same thing as the characters were experiencing. So I made the curtain call. Yeah. The curtain call of the Music Man, everybody plays an instrument, everybody plays a trombone. So in essence, 76 trombones really come out in the curtain call. So that was my favorite moment, my very favorite moment creating that.
Very fond memories of that. The groundbreaking dance musical Contact, where you won your 3rd Tony Award for Best Choreography. I mean, we were all there in the small studio first when you were downstairs at the Mitzi.
I know.
And then you moved upstairs to the Vivian Beaumont. I mean, just... you know, collaborating on that with John.
With John Wyman, yes. Oh, it was wonderful. And that came out of, I was in a club downtown about 1 a.m. And, you know, everybody, like good New Yorkers, were dressed in black dancing. And in walked this girl in the yellow dress. And she would step forward when someone wanted to dance with her, and she'd retreat when she was done with them. And I was obsessed watching her. Yeah. And about 2 weeks later, Andre Bishop, who had seen Steel Pier, said to me, if you have an idea, I'll help you develop it. And I said, you know, I do have an idea. I do have an idea. And I called John Wyman, and he came over, and we created this story about a girl in a yellow dress and how she changed some man's life.
The phenomenon known as the producers. I mean, worldwide. I mean, working with Mel Brooks.
Yes.
What was that like creating with him?
Well, you know, he came into town. He had seen Crazy Few, and he came into town and wanted to meet. And he, you know, I said, well, maybe, because Mike and I were doing a Christmas Carol at Madison Square Garden, and said, well, maybe we can meet him on Thursday. And, nope, we have to meet him tonight. It's okay. So, you know, we rush home, and at least I knew, I was a huge fan, so I knew every movie and knew everything about him, you know, so I wasn't having to do any research on him. And the door knocked on the door, and I opened the door, and he doesn't say hello. He just launches into full voice, goes, that face, that fabulous face. And he just brushes past me, dances down the hallway, and ends up on top of the sofa, and finishes the song, and then looks down at me and says, hello, I'm Mel Brooks. And I thought, well, you know, no matter what this is, if it's bad, it's still going to be an adventure.
Sure.
And then it was for the greatest adventure.
Oh,
you know, a great adventure.
The Scottsboro Boys. Mm-hmm. One of the most beautiful experiences, again, too, in the theater. I mean,
Thanks.
Downtown at the Vineyard first and on Broadway.
Yes.
I know John Kander always told me that was one of his most favorite personal shows that he ever worked on.
Yes.
I know it was for you, too, right?
Yeah, I think for David Thompson and myself and John, we all, that one really hits our hearts. And, you know, I ended up doing it like 6 times across the country in regional theaters, and then, you know, it opened last year in London and won, you know, the Best Musical and the Evening Standard Award. And how that started was, again, you know, sometimes when you do a musical, someone hands you a script or hands you a novel, or you have or you see a vision of a girl in a yellow dress. There's different ways things happen. But that was just, we wanted to work with Kander Nebb. We just wanted to work with them again. And so it was sitting down, and the idea came of, well, what if we worked on something that was true, something that was real? And because in the musical world, you're in a fantastical situation most of the time. And so we started to research the 10 greatest trials in America, and of course the Scottsboro Boys is on there, and just of how that story changed civil rights, it changed laws, it really had a big impact on American history. And so we started to research it, and we fell in love with it. And, you know, Kander Nebb always write for the underdog. You know, it's maybe this time. So they got those 9 young men, and they wanted everyone to know them individually.
Bullets Over Broadway, getting to work with Woody Allen.
I know.
It's like the difference of Mel Brooks, right? It's like this polar opposite.
It is polar opposite, yes. Yes, it is.
What was that meeting like the first time?
Well, he didn't open the door and sing to me. He's very shy and quiet, but unbelievably smart and of course witty. That all goes without saying, of course, but kind and generous, and working with him was a joy. Also because he would really listen to an audience. He would be like a comic in the back, listening to the jokes, and he the next day. The next day he would come in with his yellow pad and have new jokes written on it and hand them to the company. And that was like getting a gift, the idea that Woody Allen was handing you a joke on a yellow piece of paper. And, we'd try it that night.
So your latest projects, The Prince of Broadway with Harold Prince.
Yes, I know, because we went, talk about out of town, we went to Japan, and it went really well. But now we're coming back, and we're going to open with the Manhattan Theater Club in August. And it's so entertaining. It's so unbelievably entertaining. And it makes you realize what Hal's contribution to the history of theater is. I mean, when you see it all in one night, because everything was groundbreaking. Everything allowed you to go another way. And I think that's the real success of the show, really taking in what Hal has contributed. Yeah.
Little Dancer.
Yes.
What's going on with that?
Well, fingers crossed.
Okay.
We had another really good, we did a big production at the Kennedy Center. And then we just did another workshop about 2 months ago, and it went beautifully. And so fingers crossed that we'll be in in January. So
that's such a beautiful show too.
It's a beautiful show and a wonderful story. And of course, it stars the incredible Tyler Peck.
Yes.
Who's a big star up at the New York City Ballet. But it's because it's when Degas created that sculpture. It was the first sculpture he ever exhibited, and he got terrible reviews on it. And he was so upset, he took it away and left it in the closet for like 40 years, and it didn't come out till after he died. And then it was hailed as one of the 10 greatest sculptures. So it is about art not recognized in its time.
And Beast of the Jungle.
Yes.
That's the new John Kander musical, right?
Yes, I know.
He never stops.
He never stops, I know. The Beast in the Jungle, it is based on a Henry James novella, and it takes place in contemporary times, but it's, again, like a dance narrative. David Thompson's written the book.
Wonderful.
And John Kander has written an unbelievable score, and the entire evening's at 3/4 time. And it's very hip and sexy, very interesting.
Oh, so it's Beast in the Jungle.
The Beast in the Jungle.
I love it. Okay. My final 2 questions. Who's been the biggest influence on you in your life?
Oh, the biggest influence, well, probably Jerome Robbins, I think, and Balanchine. Those two, in their different ways. Robbins, because he danced in characters. When if you were a sailor, you were a sailor dancing. You didn't stop being a sailor when you started dancing. And and he had a great comedy in his work too. But I think it was really clocking dancing in character, and I think that's what I took from my admiration for his work. And I think Balanchine too, for the romance and the partnering. And they were very opposite, but in a way they were both also entertainers. Even though Balanchine was classical ballet, he knew his audience, and you can't say that about a lot of ballet choreographers. But Balanchine really knew how to entertain his audience and still give a very artful, creative piece of choreography.
Because I love it. You work on Broadway, you work in ballet, you work in opera, you work on film, you work on TV. You cover all the genres, with dance and everything else. Yes. I think it's fascinating.
Oh, thanks.
My final question is, what is the best bit of advice that you've been given, either personally or professionally, that you live by?
Well, I think it's the one we've talked about it. The biggest one, as Flora the Red Menace, is don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid. because the worst thing that can happen is somebody says no. But I think that's the greatest advice I've lived by too now is to go out and find it. Because the thing is, you can't wait for the phone to ring. You have to go out and create it. And so that's the thing, is to go out and create it.
This has been amazing. I have wanted to sit with you for the longest time, like to sit down for a long period of time and go through your career. We are so excited. We are all going to be there on February 19th.
Great.
Just have the best time. Susan, thank you, my love.
Thank you
Good over
so
here,
much.